Welcome, everybody. Today we are talking about the fundamentals of a DAW. DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. This is software where you can record, edit, and produce music. We are looking at the software Soundtrap today, and it looks like this app here. Soundtrap is a DAW like BandLab, Pro Tools, Logic, any of those. Now the beauty is that even though we are talking about Soundtrap today, all of the functions of the other DAWs use the same language. Now let's get to it and click on Soundtrap. Okay, now that we are in Soundtrap, mine looks a little bit different than you because I have been working in Soundtrap for a bit. So what is happening here is mine says projects. I have somebody that wants to do a collaboration with me, and that's what this is here. I have my list of projects down below, and if I want to work into any of my existing projects, I will hit Studio and I will go into that project. Now this whole screen is going to be blank for you, which means you have to go into the studio for the first time by clicking Enter Studio. Okay, now we have this form here. So what we want to do is we want to X out of any of the things that pop up. You might have some extra videos and so on. Just X out of all of them. Now, what am I looking at? First, I see numbers. Now these numbers up here are bar lines or measures, and this helps us keep track of where we are in the song, also known as composition markers. Now, this long purple line here is the playhead marker, or a timeline marker. And this here, when I click on it, I can move it side to side, and it'll start playing where my song is if I hit the play button. This brings me to the very bottom functions over here. Now a play button is always a sideways triangle like this one here. And also down at the bottom we have this red button, which is record. We have this, which is go back to the beginning. So if I click it, look at my timeline marker. Boom. And this here is rewind. I am at the start, so I can't rewind. So if I hit play, look at my timeline marker. It is moving along the bar lines. And it turned into two lines. This is pause. If I click on it, it pauses and it stays. This one here is fast forward, so look at it go forward. This the rewind now, or right back to the beginning. Now, let's look at some of the functions that we can start adding music. In the middle here, we have browse loops, which if I click it, we have some sounds that are already created in Soundtrap, and this is where we'll be coming back to today. So let me click it in the little music note here, and it'll disappear to the side. We have here beat maker, which if I click on it, I can put all these different highlight these squares to make some sounds, but we're not going to use that one today. So up here I have an X and I will get rid of it. We have play the synth, where my computer turns into a keyboard or a synthesizer, which is kind of like a keyboard, but it moves the sounds of electricity to make noise or music. So we're going to X out of this one as well. We have add a new track, which brings us all these tracks here, and we will talk about what a track is in a second. But we have voice, where we can record our own voice. We have keyboards, where we can make the sounds of the piano. We have bass and guitar. These will require an interface, so don't worry about these two until you know what an interface is. We have drums and drum machines, which kind of like the pattern maker, or loops. We have guitar and bass amp, which is going to create different sounds depending on which amp you use. We have synth again, and we have orchestral instruments, where you could use violin, trumpet, or French horn, or any instruments of the orchestra to make some sounds. Now let's X out of this again. This was my beat maker that came. Okay, next up we have at the bottom here import file, which if I have some music on my computer that I want to bring into the program, I click on that and I go find the music on my computer. And we also have invite a friend, where you saw I had a collaboration where we can invite other friends that use Soundtrap to write songs with them at the same time. Okay, we are talking tracks. Now, it says add new track. If I click it, it brings us back to this screen here where I can X out again. which this function and this function are the same. And this is bringing us to our first task today. Today, as I mentioned previously, is we're going to be working with loops. Loops are pre-recorded sounds for a certain amount of time, and then the sound repeats over and over and over. Your task today is to find 5 different loops and bring them into our project. The first thing you will be doing is click on Browse Loops, and then it brings us to this screen again. I could choose beats, which brings me a whole bunch of different sounds. X out of that. I could hit drums, brings me a whole bunch of sounds. X out of that. And then there's bass, there's piano, there's guitar, and all of these instruments and effects, and so on. There are so many sounds. Your job today is to look for 5. Now you will start with any sound you want, but remember what this little sideways triangle is, which is the play button. If I click it, I can hear what this loop offers. If I like it, I'll press on it, drag it into my project, and drop it. Now it's going to play automatically, so I could either pause the sound, or stop it, or bring it back to the beginning. Now notice, when I dropped it, it dropped in bar number 8, so I have all this space at the beginning. It also did something else. It brought in this gray bar here, which is a loop. Now this loop is, as we said, is a track that repeats over and over and over, and this track is about this long. So this is the track, the red part. The little squiggly lines inside are wave files. That's what the sound looks like if we were to see sound. So back to our loop. If it's dark gray, that means it's only going to play this loop over and over and over. And you'll see the gray lines showing us where it is starting and ending. If I do not want it to loop and I want it to just start and end where I want, I click on it and the loop disappears. The track is still there, but the loop is not. We are going to drag our track back to bar 1. So we do this by clicking somewhere more in the middle, because there's other features, and we are going to drag it all the way to the front, and then it's there. I moved my timeline marker by accident, so I could just hit back to the beginning. So these at the bottom become very important for you. You can hit play to hear it, and hit stop, and then go back. Now that you have your first sound, remember our task is to find 5 different loops. So your job now is to click through a whole bunch of these different loops and take a listen, see which ones you like, and you're going to add 5. Let's say that I've added my 5. And these are not going to sound great because I just put them on myself. You're going to have some different sizes of loops. You're going to have different sounds, different colors. The colors are just to help you with the tracks. Remember I said we're going to drag them to the start. Now this is just for us to test out, because now if they're all stacked one over top of the other like this, I hit play, they all make the sound at the same time. This could sound really awesome, or this could sound not so awesome. It's up to you. So you have the option to move your tracks around and place them where you want for it to sound good. Once you have all of your 5 loops in, you are going to click save, and it's going to go back to our projects at the very beginning, as I had showed you when we clicked on the Soundtrap app. And if you want to get back into that sound, you hit studio and it brings you right back here where you left off. So as a recap, your job is to take 5 loops, bring them into a project, place them the way that you think is going to sound great. Good luck and have fun. We shall see you again next time.